I have been using Dexcom G7 on and off since April 2022, and after many months of use, I am finally ready to share my review. This is 10 days of wear time, 7 days of sticky perfection. G7 is Dexcom's first all-in-one wearable, and I've used it extensively throughout 2022, documenting all of my journey. You can watch my G7 week up here, and if you want more videos about diabetes tech, which I make regularly, please consider subscribing. I love this new design. I have been switching between G6 and G7 over the last few months to use up my old G6 supplies, and going back to what now feels like an incredibly thick G6 sensor feels very old-fashioned. To me, thickness of a wearable was always the most important, and G7 is unbelievably thin. I've worn all of my G7s but one on my arm, and genuinely for the first 7 days, I would routinely forget which arm it was on because it genuinely is forgettable. I personally didn't enjoy wearing it on the abdomen, where location is something incredibly personal. The wearable is larger than Libre 3, much larger in fact. And of course, Libre lasts for 14 days, whereas G7 does for 10 and a half. The app is phenomenal. I nearly cried from happiness to see the same fonts being used on the Apple Watch app. Whoever the hell came up with the design for the G6 fonts should never be invited to any cocktail parties or Christmas drinks, period. You can still calibrate G7 just like you can G6. Many early adopters asked me about how to do it because it's a bit hidden. You have to go under events, glucose, and then you can enter the calibration option. The app feels modern, fresh, better, big improvement over the G6 and truly years ahead of Libre. It feels very similar to the Dexcom One, a budget CGM that Dexcom has here in the UK and many other places. It has a very similar design language. 30-minute warm-up is incredible, colossal improvement to G6, and better than 1 hour warm-up with Libre. My favorite feature of the G7 by far is the ability to wear 2 G7s at the same time, having no downtime. Glucose info all the time. It's simple. Insert new G7, magnets inside separate, the clock starts, you're still wearing your old G7, 30 minutes later, you just end the old session and pair new G7, and voila. Incredible. Sadly, to this day, there still isn't a reliable way of restarting a G7 sensor to reduce the out-of-pocket costs. I know my emails have been exploding over the past 8 months about that. Still no way of doing it. If there is a way, I will put that in the video description in the weeks and months to come. I have found accuracy to be okay, but nowhere near perfect and really dodgy at times. Now, I have used the original version of the G7. As we all know, an updated version of G7 with allegedly much better accuracy is coming and has already been launched in Germany, but it's not yet available in the UK, and Dexcom wouldn't commit to any timelines. They only confirmed that the upgraded G7 with better accuracy will be rolled out in all regions where G7 will be available. I'm told great things about the upgraded G7 from Germany, but I haven't personally used it, so I can't comment. The version that I have used had accuracy which had a lot to be desired, but they're working on it, and the upgraded version, I'm told, is very good. I found Bluetooth to be okay, but I strangely experienced a number of signal losses in cold environments. Most days I do a daily evening walk, and signal loss happens very frequently when it's cold during this walk. G7 alarms are the best alarms of any CGM on the market, period. Delay first high is something I simply couldn't live without at this point, and when I go back to G6 to use up my old supplies, I miss it unbelievably. And of course, silence all, where you can just disable everything for a set period of time. Now, silence all isn't available in the US, but Dexcom is working with the FDA to make that happen in due course. No direct to watch. What did you expect? At this point, I'm just hoping that in 15 years' time, someone who currently works at Dexcom does a tell-all book inspired by Prince Harry, where they just reveal all the gossip about what the hell has been happening at Dexcom with the direct watch project. I buy it. So, sexy modern wearable, small, great alarms, still no watch, a little bit of kinks with accuracy, you know, sticky perfection. And then the overlay arrives at day 7, and it's a problem. Now, I personally, and this is just my personal experience, I really struggle to make it last full 10 days without the overlay. Now, I have done extensive research on this and spoken to as many of my friends who use G7 and used G7 over the past 8 months or so, and I am by far not the only person that has said this, and a lot of people also need to wear the overlay to make it last anywhere near 10 days because of how unsticky the stickiness of the sticky was. Do you see what I'm saying? This overlay, I would compare it to an ugly winter coat. We all have a friend who owns one of these, we all know that. It only performs its core function. It makes the G7 last 10.5 days. An ugly winter coat will make you slightly warmer during the winter. But it's not stretchy, it doesn't let you move freely, and it just feels cheap, and I don't feel great wearing it. And when you're wearing something, you really want to make sure you feel good doing it, and that just ain't cutting it. Now, Dexcom spokesperson has told me that they're working on a new version of the overlay, and I'm hoping it'll be much better than this. Dexcom spokesperson also confirmed to me that all clinical trials were performed with the overlay on. All trials data in terms of sensors lasting to 10 days is based on use of the patch. So if you want to have the best chance of sensors staying on, apply the patch at the start of the session. And so that's G7. It is by far the best CGM I have ever worn in my whole life. It's good. It's very good. Very good CGM, very good wearable, great app, great alarms, less mental burden. Although you have to deal with this thing if you want to make the whole thing last. And some questionable fashion decisions. So that's my G7 review. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it useful. Let me know if you have any questions down below, and I will answer them as quickly as possible. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheerios!